Welcome back to another episode on the Beauty Industry Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Kennedy. In today's episode, I'm going a little bit rogue. Previously, we've spoken about business strategy, we've covered some controversial topics, and I've also had the pleasure of interviewing some incredible business owners and entrepreneurs in the beauty industry and really unpacking their journey of how they got to where they are today. And after having people tuning in to their podcast episodes weekly, seeing posts go up on social media, and also receiving an incredible shout out from Danielle at Bobby Charles when she won Australian Salon of the Year at the ABIA, it's become very apparent that there is some curiosity as to who is the founder of Beauty Industry Leaders, where did she come from, and what is it that she actually does. And so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sammy Kennedy, and today I'm going to be sharing my journey of how I got to where I am today through a lot of challenges, a lot of crazy stories, and incredible lessons. So to give you a bit of context, I didn't grow up in the city. I grew up in the country. If you know where Albany, WA is, it's about a 400-kilometre drive down south from Perth. And I grew up with my mum, Sharon, who is a nurse, my dad, his name's Tom, and he's an electrician, and my brother, who is 2 years younger than me, and his name's Mike. And to be really honest with you, now that I look back on my childhood, I am so grateful for the family I have and the experiences I had, because when you have a business as a family, it either makes or breaks you. And a lot of my childhood, my teenage years, and even into being an adult now, a lot of the time it has always been in business. And so my journey in business started in 2007. So I was 5 years old. My mum and dad bought our first family business, and this was called Southwest Amusements. So basically it had all the classic arcade games. So your 48 and ones, it would have like the Buck Hunter Pro, like all these shooting gun games, you know, racing bikes, all of that fun stuff, jukeboxes, pool tables, pinball machines. And what we'd do is we'd put these in holiday parks, backpackers or pubs across Albany and regional WA. And then every weekend or school holidays, we'd go and do the pub rounds and collect coins. So the deal we had going is wherever we had the video games or jukeboxes, basically it was a 60-40 split. So we'd get 60% and the business owners or people that we put the games in and stuff, they would get 40%. And so to be honest, it was a great cash business. We honestly don't see much of this stuff anymore. And I think that's one of the reasons why the business started to fade away over time. You know, it's kind of like one of those video killed the radio star situations when you have a business that's kind of going out of fashion and you've got all these new innovative things like, you know, PS4s and Xboxes. It's very hard to compete and keep the old when there's so much new and improved and exciting things coming forward. And so this business we have kept over the years. We still have a lot of the video games and they've stayed with us throughout our time, but we did end up kind of stopping putting all the video games and stuff in pubs, I think around like 7-8 years later, because it just wasn't bringing in the money like it used to. So to give you an idea, we had to start competing with MTV. They would always have like Rage or MTV on the TVs at the pubs and hotels. So all of a sudden people weren't using the jukebox. And then we also had a lot of people not turning the video games on because they were trying to save power. Like there were just so many different things that we had to compete with and had no control over because we couldn't actually go visit the venues often or manage them. And oh my gosh, don't even get me started. If there was a coin jam or something went wrong and we had to go out and fix them, sometimes you got to drive, 2 hours or so to just go fix one game. So it had some great pros and definitely had its cons, but that was where we first started. And when we were making money through that business, we then in 2008 opened our second business. And so this was called SimWorld. It had a physical shop front at the Albany Plaza. And basically it was racing games on motion platform simulators. So we were the first to do it in Australia. Now it's a lot more popular, and it's crazy because at the time we were like sponsoring one of the race car drivers at Bathurst. You know, we had our simulators taken over there. There was a lot of cool stuff that now that I look back at it, it's like that's actually a huge achievement. But when I was a kid, I was just like, oh yeah, that's just what dad's off to do. And what we found is that through owning that business, some things are meant to stay a passion and not become a business. And this is one of the conversations I've had with my dad a lot, because most of the business stuff was more my dad and I. I would say my mum and brother are definitely not as business minded as dad and I. So this business did relatively well, to the point where we were like, oh, maybe we'll just go bigger and better and we'll actually leave Albany and open something up in Perth. And so we took that business, SimWorld, and we ended up moving into the Westfield Carousel in Perth. And honestly, the overheads absolutely killed us. You know, you've got your fit out costs, you've got your outgoings. We had to pay 70 grand rent a year. And then on top of that, with all the outgoings and hidden costs, it ended up being over $100,000. And so we learned a lot about doing fit outs and being able to sustain rent and making sure that, you know, you've got enough cash flow, because that was one of the biggest problems. When you are running a business that isn't a necessity and it's a novelty or luxury, for example, entertainment, it is really hard to keep people coming back, because either they get bored of it, it's like a one-off fun kind of thing, or they just don't have the budget to consistently continue doing it. So those businesses were okay, but then they started to become the biggest financial burden. Dad would be driving between Albany and Perth every single weekend just trying to run the place. And it was really interesting because you'd see people walk past and it's like they'd look in the shop window and go, oh, that looks really cool. And then they just go back on their phones. And something that's made me realize, even in today's world, if you own a business, it's like, even if you have signage, it's like you need neon signs or moving screens. Everyone's just glued to their phones. Even if you're getting that quote unquote foot traffic past your business, you really need to be able to capture the attention and be able to get people in, because there's so many things that we're competing with in today's world. We're distracted by our phones. We're distracted by other people. You know, there's a lot of, I guess, commitments and distractions that are just keeping us from actually, you know, being engaged or present in the real world. That's a little bit of a sidetrack, sorry. But basically with SimWorld, we did that for, I think, a year or two in Carousel, and it destroyed us financially. We ended up leaving. We had to pull out of the lease early. We had to defit the whole place. It was an absolute nightmare. And because we were kind of at that breaking point at the time, because we'd invested almost $500,000, it was my dad and two other guys he worked with, and that partnership just went really, really bad. Like it wasn't great. So everyone kind of walked away from it, and then we got presented with an opportunity to buy the bowling alley business. And so one of the partners from SimWorld came with us into this new venture in bowling. And then there was also another guy. And my dad, this other guy, I'm just going to give some fake names here, but like, let's say Ben was one guy and then Jerry was another guy. We had Ben and Jerry who weren't putting in the same amount of effort and work. And so over time, you know, Dad would do renovation of the kitchen and be trying to really get customers in and look after them. And that's honestly where I got my first job. I was 10 years old. I really was understanding how to deal with customers and conflict and clean up, and then also like do all of the software. So how do you set games up and bowling, and how do you do bookings and all of those things? And that kind of like threw me in the deep end, because Dad had no idea what he was doing, but he was putting trust in me to figure it out. Because I was just one of those Asian kids, like if you don't know me, I'm half Chinese. I'm like one of those Asian kids that's just like, I pick everything up really easily. So by the age of 10, I already knew how to do the system better than anyone else. And, that's when I started getting my first foot in the door into like business. I was like, oh, this is so good. I love it. But basically, as the time went on, we had some really hectic things going in the partnership. So Jerry and his wife, they were stealing money. We estimate that about $25,000 was stolen, which wasn't great. And then we had Jerry. He had one wife, and then she died. And then he got a second girlfriend, wife, I don't know. And then I was at school, like I was young, and I found out that they were selling meth behind the counter, which is pretty hectic. And before we found out all of this stuff, we decided to walk away from the business because it just wasn't what we thought it was going to be. When you're in a partnership with someone else, you want to make sure that your skills are complementary to each other. You can't have two of the same, or you can't have you doing all of the work and them just take. Like, you've got to find that balance. And that's something that we didn't have in that partnership. I did actually forget in 2013. So 2012, we took over the bowling alley. In 2013, we actually built a drive-in cinema. So you can imagine this bowling alley, there's a big car park there. We actually built the drive-in cinema right there, and you would use the car park from the bowling alley to then park and watch the drive-in cinema. And that came with its challenges as well. We bought a projector. It came and the globe was smashed. They didn't make that model or that style anymore. There was just so many nightmares. We even built the entire drive-in cinema setup. So we had like 2 sea containers stacked at the bottom, and then we had like 3 above them. And basically we got the screen up, we were running, and then the Albany Council came to us and told us, hey, you can't be doing this. It's not structurally engineered properly, all of that. So we actually had to rip it down and build it a second time. And so in the drive-in, I would pretty much be setting up the speakers. I would sit in the car and take everyone's payment and get them to park up. Like, that was another side. It's like always being that front-facing customer service kind of role, and just understanding, okay, well, how do we actually get more people to come to these movies? Because we had to compete with the local cinema. And, do people really want to see movies from the past at a drive-in cinema? Like, trying to, once again, bring a blast from the past back into the future. It's really hard because people are lazy. They want to watch Netflix in the comfort of their own home and, have their blankets and their comfy bed set up. They don't want to be sit up squished against a car wheel trying to watch a movie and hoping the radio tunes in properly. So, yeah, it was fun doing the drive-in cinema, and it was really nostalgic, but you start to realize after a while there's a reason why these businesses don't exist anymore. And I think some nights you get like 50 cars, and then the other nights you only get 3. And when it costs you like $300 to $500 to just show a film and you're only charging $30 a ticket, it makes it really hard to financially sustain the cost of running a business like that. So back to where I was saying, it was 2014, the partnership at the bowling alley started to fall apart. We actually then ventured out on our own to open up a go-karting business. So where bowling is, where the drive-in is, on the same block of land, there was also a old go-karting business, and it hadn't been running for years. And we basically took over that building. We bought all brand new go-karts. We redid the track. We set up traffic lights. It was really cool. I loved it. Like, honestly, now that I'm saying all these things out loud, I had the most fun childhood. Like, I got to do all the crazy stuff and be in the outdoors before social media and being glued to your phones and TikTok existed. And I'm really grateful for that. Go-karts, it was great because every single weekend, like I would have been around 13 or 14 now, I would be going in with Dad. I would be, serving people at the customers. We'd be changing tires. We'd be filling up the go-karts. And I probably wasn't at the age to do the safety inductions, because when you have a kid trying to tell you how to do something, I found that like a lot of people undermine your authority just based on your age. And to be honest with you, that's something that has really been a challenge for me to overcome, imposter syndrome, thinking that I'm not old enough to be an authority or to be able to help people because, you know, you have to be 40 years old or 60 years old to be wise and knowledgeable. But yeah, basically with go-karts, getting people to sign waivers, making sure that, you know, they have the right equipment on, like all of those things, dealing with drunk people. Oh my goodness. Trying to run a business with alcohol involved. And like we didn't have a liquor license and were selling alcohol at the venue, but people would come in Christmas parties, BYO, and they would just get smashed. We had someone break their ankle or shin. It was pretty bad. There was a bad crash. And another thing that really killed that business was the insurance. So one year there was a girl in Perth, not at our go-karts, thankfully. I think our insurance was around $3,000 or $5,000 a year at the time. And this one girl, she wasn't wearing a hairnet when she was going around the go-kart track. And so basically what happened is her hair got caught on the fence and it ripped out her entire scalp. And then what that meant is out of 3 insurance companies that offered insurance for go-karting, 2 of them dropped it completely. And then the only one that offered it made it like $20,000 a year. And so that insurance started to absolutely kill us. And we had that business for 4 years. So it did quite well, but it just wasn't getting consistent cash flow. It was really stressful. You would be waiting in there, you know, from 10 a.m. to like 6 or 8 p.m. hoping that more people were going to walk in. And I think that's a really stressful way to be living, you know, once again, another novelty entertainment business. We really found that looking back now, there was no marketing strategy. There was no, I guess, idea that we actually existed unless you drove past. And I think that's a huge thing to talk about. Like if you build this business and you think that people are just going to come because it's so exciting and great, like first of all, people need to know you exist. Second of all, you need to make sure that you're doing something to consistently nurture or remind them that you're out there and invite them back if it's been a while. Because if you're always front of mind, the second they go, oh, I want to get this done, like they'll think of you. But if you kind of just put yourself out there, they have one experience and that's it, then sometimes you just lose them forever. So by some miracle, we were offered the opportunity by the landlords who obviously own the land for both bowling and go-karts. And they said, hey, would you guys be interested in taking the bowling alley back over? And at the time, you know, we were really hesitant on it. We didn't think that it was a good idea because we were just so scarred from the partnership and just things had gone down south. It had a really bad reputation. You know, if you look through some of the Google reviews, you would be absolutely shocked. It would be like, this guy was drinking bourbon all night and like just locked the doors on us because he didn't want us to come in. And, you know, this person, like it was just so bad. There was a whole, I remember one time there was like this rainbow ladies league and it's all women who are like 60 to 80 and they come bowling, but they're traveling from Perth and regional WA and everything. And they all come down to Albany and they rocked up and he didn't open up for them. I think he came in, he closed the door and then they were all crying and they were coming down to go-karts and, you know, just it was a real big mess, to be honest, like looking back at some of the stuff that went on. But we got offered the opportunity to take it back over. And although being hesitant, we thought, you know what? It was probably the most consistent cash flow business we owned at the time. So why not? You know, we didn't have to pay anything for the business. It was kind of just handed to us on a silver platter. They just needed someone to keep paying the rent. So the lease was taken over and we ended up doing that. And within time, that allowed us to close down and get rid of go-karts and then just focus on running the bowling alley. So in 2018, I was 16 years old And I was officially the manager and running the entire front of house while Dad would hang down the back, fixing bowling lanes if they broke down. And that really taught me, okay, how do I manage the books? How do we make sure that we know how much money we're bringing in on like a Friday or Saturday night? How are we making sure that our bookings are showing up? Like there were so many little things that you wouldn't think of that are so important when it comes to running a bowling alley. Because if you've got some people who are rocking up to bookings early and other people are going over, you can get some really angry customers. And being able to de-escalate negative situations, being able to provide incredible customer service and also have systems and processes in place for creating efficiency in the business. So if someone's down the back and fixing the lanes, who's doing food? Who's doing the front desk? Who's actually setting people up on lanes if they're having problems? Like being able to delegate tasks and roles was a key skill that I learned early on. And I think as bowling got busier, it was still just Dad and I running it. And so I think from a young age, it's also that when you own a business and you don't have the budget to employ people, you kind of learn how to do everything. And so over time, we just made a lot of mistakes. We made a lot of people unhappy because bowling lanes were breaking down. You know, there wasn't enough people to get food done fast enough. Like we made a lot of different mistakes and we learned a lot of valuable lessons. And it was really great because usually when you're young, like I was saying before, you know, I had a lady come in once and she was a private school mum from Great Southern Grammar. And she goes, I want to talk to the manager. And I just remember sitting there going like, oh, what is it that you need? Like I can help you. She's like, no, I don't want to talk to a child. I want to talk to the manager. And I remember this moment of power because my dad came up and he said, hey, I'm Tom. Like, what do you need? She's like, oh, I'd like to talk to the manager. And he's like, oh, what's it about? She's like, oh, I need to make a booking. And he's like, well, that's the manager there. I'm just here to fix the machines. And I just never forget seeing this lady's reaction of how furious she was that, you know, her ego or whatever had been crushed because she had to swallow her pride and realize that this kid's actually got it sorted. And I think that was my moment in power when I realized I want to be a business owner. I want to be able to have the power to make decisions. I don't want to feel small. Don't know if that kind of ties in with this story, but anyways, just a random thought. For those of you who actually know me, I have some hectic ADHD and I struggle to carry a storyline without going on a million sidetracks. So hopefully you can keep up and hopefully what I'm saying is making sense so far. But yeah. So bowling, running that, absolutely loved it. And then we decided that year that we were going to run a rodeo. So at this stage, just to give you an idea, bowling was turning over 15 grand in like a bad month and 40K in a good month. So if you were to look at that on average, I think we were turning over around 300 to 350,000 per year. And so with that money and that backing, we decided to run a rodeo. Well, it wasn't really we, it was Dad. He decided that he wanted to run a rodeo. Sidetrack, he had a midlife crisis, and he got a pet bull and it was a baby, like a baby calf. Is that what they're called? Yeah. Had a baby calf. And I remember rocking up home from school one day and seeing this bull. And that's when our whole lives changed again. Like there was this whole different trajectory. Dad posted videos all the time growing up with the bull. We'd bring this bull into the bowling alley and people would be requesting and getting upset if Bruce wasn't there. That's the name of the bull. If you want to check him out on Facebook, his name is Brucey Brahman. He is quite a little influencer now. He has 11,000 followers. And through having Bruce and launching the Calgon Stampede, we started creating this incredible brand. In saying that, the first year, we went too big, too fast, and it really put a toll on us financially. We got into $80,000 of debt. So we decided to run a 3-day event. We did it in January, which isn't a great time because by that stage, all your holiday and tourist people have all left Albany. And I don't know why we decided to do 3 days. Like, just the cost for security, toilets are like 20 grand a day alone. Security is like 15 to 20 grand. Just to give you an idea of all these numbers, these things add up, and it really crushed us. And we actually couldn't pay people. We couldn't. We failed so massively. And for the next 12 months, we were just paying off invoices as we could. We had to let people know and be super transparent. The event didn't go well. We haven't even been able to break even. We don't have the money right now. So we actually relied heavily on the income from bowling to be able to recover from all of that debt. Now, in 2019, so I would have been 17 years old. I think I was in year 12. We spent the whole year like really working our asses off to recover that debt. But then we decided we would run the rodeo a second time. And for anyone who's ever hosted an event or launched something for the first time, it's hard because when you're launching something, there's no social proof. You don't really have the brand awareness, and you don't know if people are going to love it or not. And we thought, well, you know what? We've already done it once. We've learned so much. There's so many different things will change. Let's do it again. And so that year, we decided to do it a second time, and it still didn't work. We got into a further $60,000 debt. And these are like some really expensive mistakes or lessons to be learning, especially when, only one person is making a consistent income. Like, my mum is a nurse, so she's sitting on like, I don't know, 70 grand a year. I think that's average salary for a nurse. And then you've kind of got someone else who is just, maybe the businesses are doing well, or maybe we're just going to get into massive debt. And like, growing up with pretty much no money because we had a lot of debt, it really messed me up financially. Like, being able to look at things as investments is really hard when you've had a lot of financial decisions in the past not work out for you. And so over time, dealing with the stress of not having money, I would never spend money on myself. Like, I would feel guilty as a kid if I asked mum to buy me a new pair of school shoes. Like, instead, I would work at bowling, I would save up, and then I would buy them because I just didn't want to put that pressure on my parents. And as time went on, I realized, well, I kind of need to make my own money. And when you're working at bowling and you're working for a family business, you're working 12-hour days and you're getting paid $20. And at the time, I was a kid. I didn't know any different. I thought that was great money. But then I realized if I get a job, even though I'm getting paid like $13, I think it was $41 when I got my first job that wasn't a family business, at least I'm getting paid by the hour. So if I work 12 hours, at least I'll make, over $100, not just 20 for the whole day. So, if you want to have a business and have some cheap labor, just have more children. I'm just kidding. Children are so expensive these days. But anyways, I also found that through all these business ideas and things that I'd been exposed to, when it was my year 12 ball, no one was hosting the after party. And so I was like, Dad, Mum, can we host the after party? Like, I'll organize the whole thing. And I thought that through running the rodeo, I was like, we have like a 2,000, 3,000 person event. How hard can it be doing it for just like 100, 200 people? And I mentioned this on the podcast before, but basically I organized a security guard. I bought speakers. We had like professional massive speakers from running all the rodeos and stuff like that. So we were able to use them. We, at the time, defitted the whole of go-kart. So we turned that into a nightclub, notified the police, everything. And I was charging, I think it was like $10 or $15 for people that I went to school with and were in my year and going to the ball. And then if it was anyone who wasn't at our school or someone who was probably someone I didn't really like that bullied me, I was just like, you know what? You can pay $20. And then I added an extra 50 tickets at the end and I charged like $50 for them. And it was crazy. Like, I wasn't dumb. I was getting these wristbands. They were custom made. So it wasn't just like a one solid color that you get from Officeworks. I had this like white wristband with these star patterns. I even had people try like get a green highlighter and write on these wristband, like a white wristband to try get in. Like, it was crazy. But that was my most successful thing I did at that age. I made $5,000 profit from running that event. And that actually helped me make my own money to move to Perth. So I didn't have any savings because I was obviously getting paid like nothing at bowling. And I was, spending the money when I got it. I didn't know how to manage money. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm moving to Perth in 4 or 5 months from now. How am I going to afford this? And so the inner entrepreneur or business person in me was like, all right, we got to make some money. We got to make big money. Here's how we're going to do it. And so that was probably one of the, looking back now, coolest things that I was able to do, thinking outside the box. So obviously I got to the stage where I was going to follow the traditional path of, what you're taught at school. Go to uni, get good grades, get a degree. Then you'll be able to get a good job and work 9 to 5 to the rest of your life. And then, buy yourself a nice car, get married, buy a house, have kids, and, just follow the whole cycle or pattern that everyone else does. And I remember thinking to myself, what degree can I go study that's going to pay well? And I remembered I wanted to do physio, and I was told, you're not going to get the right grades. If you know what ATAR is, I got like an 83.75 or something ATAR, and I needed, I think, like a 95. And at that stage, if you're getting 95, you'd rather go do dentistry and medicine. And I thought, yeah, health is where I'm at. That's what I want to do. But I just realized I was not going to get the grades I needed. So goodbye to that idea. I decided, okay, I'm going to go study to become a doctor of Chinese medicine. So my mum's dad, he's called Gung Gung. There's Chinese for grandpa. He is 80 years old in December and he's still working. He's a Chinese herbalist and doctor of Chinese medicine. I absolutely admire him. He has just been able to heal and help people. And one of the reasons why I wanted to study that degree is because I really wanted to connect in with my heritage and my culture and learn more about who I am and where I came from and that side of things, but also really being able to help and heal people in a holistic way rather than like pumping them full of drugs from big pharma and, kind of giving people band-aid approaches to solutions. I really love natural health and being able to empower people to use the resources we have that are natural for our body to heal. And so I moved to Perth at 17. I started living out of home in a studio apartment, and I actually loved acupuncture. Like, it was so cool. We were learning how to put needles into people. We were learning all about the different herbs. We could pretty much diagnose people's illnesses by feeling their pulse and looking at their tongues. Like, I learned a lot of really random but cool skills that I guess I can now call party tricks. So while I was studying at uni, that was also the time that COVID hit. So back home in Albany, the bowling alley was forced to shut for an extended period of time. And that was really tough on us financially, as it was for everyone. 3 or so months, no real income. it kind of does put a stress on you. Fortunately, mum was an essential worker, so that was able to continue bringing in that consistency. I think dad did get some of the government grants to be able to get through with bowling. And then in the middle of the year, I decided to go do an eyelash extension course so I could start working for myself and choose my own flexible hours that worked with uni. When I moved from Albany to Perth I think, there's honestly so many parts to this story I can't even. Like when I was finishing up school, I was working 4 jobs. I was working at bowling. I was working at a Thai restaurant. I was working at a gym doing sales. And then I was also working at Officeworks. So yeah, that's more skills that I just started acquiring from doing different things. But basically, when I left Albany, I used Officeworks in Albany to then get me a job at Officeworks in Osborne Park. And after being there for 3 months, I was like, this is absolute torture. I cannot stand working for someone else, having to ask for a manager's password every time I want to put an item that's more than $200 through the till, having customers abuse you during COVID. Why is this not in stock? Everyone was coming in and I really saw the greed of people during COVID. People would be buying 5 monitors and 4 tables because now they've got to work from home. And just the level of greed and scarcity, I just didn't want to be in that environment. It felt so toxic and so I wasn't happy. I really wasn't happy. And so to go back to what I was talking about, I decided I want to work for myself doing my own thing. Previously, I've done makeup and stuff. I used to do a lot of the girls' ball makeup and I thought, well, makeup's not really consistent. So maybe I'll do eyelash extensions. And I went and took a course. It was a 1-day course. It was honestly the most basic thing I learned. Like I didn't even learn how to do a refill. It was so bad, to be honest with you. And I then started doing clients from home. And it was great because, at the time I was like, I'm making $300 this week. I'm making $800 this week. And for me, it was like, oh, I'm making all this money now. Before I was only making, $400 a week from Officeworks. But now I don't have to work as many hours, but I'm making as much money. And then what actually happened is because my prices were so cheap, I was charging like $50, $80 for a full set. I was attracting nightmare clients. People would put their hand up and want to book an appointment, but then they'd actually never show up. I wasn't taking deposits, and it kind of got to the point where it was taking such a mental toll on me. I felt like a failure because A, I didn't have the skills yet to do lashes well because I was just starting out. And B, I wasn't really having any consistent income coming in. It was kind of like 1 week was a lot of money and then others I might go for 2 weeks with like barely $100 a week. And it was really stressful when, you're paying for rent and you got to pay for food and everything. You're living out of home, you're young. And that's another thing, just sidetrack. It's so interesting that pay rates obviously go up with age because, as someone who moved out of home early, just because I'm younger, I'm getting paid less. I still have to pay what adults pay for food and rent and stuff. It's so interesting the way the pay rate system in Australia works. And that's another reason why I chose entrepreneurship over working for someone else because I'm like, I would actually rather be unpaid, working hard for something that I know is going to bring me a return in the long term rather than working for someone else minimum wage and hating life. So yeah, I've just forgotten what I was saying. So I did the lash course. I worked for myself at home. I did have some clients, but I just got to the point I was like, I think I actually need more experience learning how to do lashes. I don't think I should be running a business right now because I just don't yet have the skills and the confidence to be able to do this on my own. So I remember scrolling through Instagram and thinking, maybe I should just work for someone else. And by some miracle, I saw a Facebook ad or post pop up and it was an ad for Lou Studio. Shout out to Cassandra. She's actually my podcast editor now, audience. So I actually went and worked for her for a while. It was just the 2 of us at the time. So I was learning how to do eyelashes, and I also got taught other things like waxing and brows and things like that. But to be honest with you, I wasn't great at eyelashes because there I wasn't allowed to use those pro-made or pre-made fans. I had to learn how to use the handmaids, and I just really struggled to pick it up. It took me a while. I was super inconsistent. Like sometimes I'd sit there and I just felt like the biggest failure because I did a classic course. Then I kind of went, oh, yeah, I'll be a volume lash artist now and just buy ProMaze. And then now for me to continue having this job, I had to do handmaids. And it was I just felt really stressed all the time trying to do it. Over time, I did get better, but I don't think I was ever an incredible lash artist until, probably about a year and a half in. And that just goes to show that if you go take a course in beauty and then you go jump into running a business, you don't actually yet have the skills, the speed, the efficiency, and the quality of results to be able to provide a great service and also retain clients. And so, whether you're an aspiring beauty business owner or, you're just someone who has thought about it, like I know most of you listening would actually already be way into your journey. But like something I wish people understood more is that you don't just go take a beauty course, quit your job and open a business. Like you first need to learn the skill, get the knowledge, become an expert at the thing. And then once you've done that, then you've got to learn how to run the business side of things, because being a great service provider and running a business, they are two completely different skill sets. And had I known from the start that if I were to work for someone else and just focus on improving my skills before I added the pressure of running a business, I probably would have saved a bit of money and just not put myself under so much unnecessary stress. So at the same time of, working for someone else for a bit, back home, we also had, lockdowns and all of those fun things, no interstate travel. And what that meant is that, people can't travel interstate. They can't travel internationally. There's nothing else to do. Maybe we will just try one more time at doing this rodeo. Maybe we'll just give it one more shot. And we did, and it went off. Like we had 3,500 people rock up. We turned over $73,000 of profit. And we were finally starting to have like this brand awareness and people like, oh, this is the place to be. And so that really took off for us, and that allowed us to, I guess, kind of restore our faith of like, oh, maybe we'll actually continue doing this yearly because this is a good cash injection. But why I'm telling you this is because those first 2 years, we lost so much money and we had to make a lot of mistakes and learn things before we could make that. And sometimes it's so easy, like you try something once and it doesn't work out and then you like give up because you're like, it doesn't work. And then you try it a second time, like, it actually takes time to build businesses and it takes time to build brand awareness. It takes time to figure out how to make things run smoothly. And so to see that third year, finally this business was taking off, it didn't feel like it was all for nothing. We could have given up at that second year and we would probably be so sour about it still. But because we kept going and, call it a bit of blind faith or stupidity, whatever you may think, being able to just keep showing up and being resilient, that allowed us to have our breakthrough. So 2021, my old boss, when I was working in beauty, she decided to close her business down. She had a baby and I decided to go out on my own, and I was, really fortunate that she allowed me to, if the clients wanted to come with me, they could, and I'm really grateful for that. I think I had about like 8 or 12 that actually followed me. So before I went, and I knew, because she was closing up at a certain date, before I went into opening up my own business, I was like, well, the first time I failed miserably. I know how to deal with customers. I know how to do like all of the consultation forms and all of that fun stuff, basic business stuff. But I was like, how am I actually going to stand out? Because there's a fair few people doing beauty at the time. And I remember asking and putting up a status, does anyone know a business coach? And at the time I had heaps of people comment Steph Gorton. And so I signed up to her Purpose and Profit Mastermind. But keep in mind, at the time, I had just spent all my money on getting a brand new bed. I just got all my stock and supplies ordered and a ring light and all of those setup costs, which cost me like $2,500 or something. And then I was like, well, I need a business coach. And I didn't actually know how much a business coach was going to cost. Like I kind of thought maybe like $2,000, I think. I wasn't really sure. And then all of a sudden I had this great conversation, got on the sales call, and it was like, yeah, it's $5,000. And at this stage, I'm 18 years old. So I'm like, that's a lot of money for me, $5,000. Like I'm going to have to host another, after ball party or something. But I just remember thinking, okay, well, what can I do to make $5,000? And I think there's a lesson in this, or something that I want to share. As an entrepreneur, you need to be resourceful. It's so easy to go, oh, I can't afford it. But your mindset should be, well, if I want it and it's a priority for me, how can I afford it? How am I going to make this happen? And I think that's one reason why I've been quote unquote successful in, being able to build a business, make money, do all of those things, because I've always just not taken no for an answer and found a solution. And so, I called up my mum and dad. They obviously didn't have spare money to give me. Bless them. Love them to death. And my mum said, why don't you ask Gungung and Pawpaw? And I remember the fear in me. I'm not joking. Like I had anxiety. I never asked anyone for money. It is such an ego thing. I'm just like, oh, I don't want to look like I need help. I don't want that responsibility or to feel like I owe something. And, at the time I had this big vision to open up the beauty business, build up a clientele in eyelash extensions and, brows and waxing and all of those things. And then once I finish my uni degree, I'll have a holistic health and wellness space doing acupuncture and beauty. And that was my vision. And so I pitched that to my grandparents and I said, like, this is what I want to do. Can I please borrow the money? And I actually remember for the first time, they actually really believed in me and they were like, yes. And I was really shocked. Like I was taken back. I didn't think anyone was going to, support me or believe in me to do this. And so I borrowed that money. It was $5,000. Paid the deposit, got the business coach, and I was a month out from opening up my beauty salon. I found a room. I ended up leasing that. And then the whole month and lead up, I was like, well, I need to get X amount of clients booked so that I'm not just opening and paying this rent with no money coming in, because I knew what it was like to have no money coming in. It's very stressful, as you probably know. So I got to the point and I was like, all right, I'm just going to do whatever it says in here to do. And so there was like lead generation posts, there was these marketing strategies, like selling on stories, all these things. And I was like, what I thought I knew about, getting clients and building a business and stuff, I just realized at the time I knew nothing. I know how to navigate challenges really well. I know how to effectively problem solve. I know how to deal with people. I know how to create a great vision and improve things and innovate. But when it actually came to the strategy side, the systems and processes, I really lacked and I had a lot to learn. And so one thing I will say is like you can have a lot of experience, but you still need to build up the knowledge and skills. So you can, for example, you could do a deadlift at the gym and just keep lifting the bar and putting those reps in. But if you're not getting corrected on your form, your technique, you don't know all the right cues, you're going to have a really hard time and it's going to take you a very long time to start seeing progress. But if you've got a coach there, someone guiding you, giving you all those little pointers and tips, that's how you start having quick wins. And not everything happens overnight, but it definitely speeds up the process. And I've seen this happen in the businesses we've owned, from me not being a business coach and not understanding key skills like marketing and sales and systems and processes. Before, it was taking, 4 to 5 years to build up the awareness in these businesses. But now it only takes one. So, over time, the more mistakes you make, the more failures you have, the more you learn. And so pretty much a month out from opening, I was posting up lead gen posts. I was doing marketing. I was just learning all these new things. And my first 2 weeks, I was fully booked. And for someone who had no boundaries, for someone who was willing to just take on any client she could for any amount of money because I was just so excited, I had, 6 days a week, 12 to 13 hours a day, just booked. And I remember making like 2.5 grand my first week. I hit my first 10K month within the month of opening, and I was like, this is like really good. I actually love the amount of money that's coming in. Like, this is insane. And I just remember, because I learned marketing strategies and I was dominating those local Facebook groups and, attracting all these clients, it was really interesting because you would see other businesses. I'm one of those people that just wants to be friends with everyone. Like, I'm not really, standoffish or competition. Like, I might have a resting bitch face sometimes, but I'm super chill, very genuine and just down to earth. But I just feel like when I tried to, reach out to people or, do anything in the beauty industry, everyone wants to shut you down. It was very isolating and competitive. And I don't know, that was one thing that I didn't like about the industry. And I guess another reason for creating this podcast to really like break that stigma and bring those like-minded people together. I digress. But basically, the business was doing really well. And, I did that for a while. It got to the point though where I was really burning myself out. So keep in mind, I'm running this business, doing marketing, doing clients, doing crazy hours. And I'm also studying full-time at uni. So I looked back on all the hours. I was looking back on all the hours in my booking system, I think, 6 or so months ago. And it was crazy. I was working 40 to 50 hours a week in the salon. And I was also studying 20 hours a week at uni, plus doing assignments and everything. And this is before ChatGPT existed. So I have never hustled harder in my life than then, because I was just so, I guess, obsessed with making money and seeing clients and just, wow, this level of freedom. I could never have that being an employee for someone else. It was blowing my mind. And it kind of became this like crossroad between, do I want to make more money or do I want to get good grades and go to uni? And then I was like, well, I looked at the paychecks for acupuncture and it was like average acupuncturist makes 60 to 80,000 a year. And I'm like, well, I'm making like 10K a month. I'm definitely going to make more doing this. And then it kind of hit me. I was like, oh, well, maybe in beauty, you actually can make money. Given that you're, pricing profitably and doing everything. Like, I do know a few people that make a lot of money, but there's no profit. And so, just being able to kind of have that realization that, oh, is this what I want? And I was getting through my degree and it was really hard for me because at the time, I didn't know, but I have ADHD. And so, sitting for 3-hour lectures and, half of it's in Chinese and I don't speak Chinese and, a lot of the people studying it were Chinese and it was really hard. I felt like I was at a massive disadvantage because not only was I learning a degree, but I was also learning another language and my brain was just imploding because, running your own business, studying at uni full time, and then helping out with family business behind the scenes, how much can one person handle? And this is another point I want to make. Like, for so long, I have lived and thrived in chaos. It's been really hard for me to regulate my nervous system and slow down until this year. And when you kind of thrive off those chaotic environments and, you perform under pressure, it's crazy what it does to you, like mentally, physically, like you push yourself past what you believe could be possible. But in saying that, it's only possible to do it for a short amount of time. You can't do that for, 5-10 years straight. It will absolutely destroy you. And that is the exact lesson I learnt at the end of that year was I was working 12 to 13-hour days. Uni had finished up for the year and I was getting this shooting nerve pain, down my elbows, into my arms, my hands. I was feeling it all throughout my back. I couldn't, when you sit on the ground, if you had your legs out straight and you're trying to touch your toes, I was shooting nerve pain all through my spine, down my back, into my legs. Like, it was some of the worst pain I've ever experienced, and living that every single day, waking up and just going, when's it going to go away? And it never did. There were telltale signs about 4 months beforehand, because I was getting PT at the time, and, I was trying to do some of the stretches, and I was like, I can't do this. It's too painful. And, she's like, what do you mean? And I just thought it will get better with time. It'll be fine. It got way worse, to the point where I could barely work. I had committed to, 2 to 4 weeks of Christmas bookings where I was working crazy hours, and I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And then I decided, you know what, I need to go investigate. And so I booked in to see a doctor. I went and got a spine scan done. And that took a little bit to get my results back. And, at the same time, we got an email from uni saying that at this stage, we're changing the degree structure. Anyone who studied up to these units, you'll have to transfer into the new degree. So my degree got cancelled. Now, keep in mind that, it's COVID. Everyone's studying natural health. Lecturers didn't want to get the jab. When we first started, we had 30 students. Then it came down to 3, myself, Sergio, and this other chick, Hannah. And just to see the numbers drop off like flies, it was really bad. And so our degree got cancelled. I could restart the degree again, but what that would mean is, of the 20 or so units that I would have done with the new degree structure, and once again, uni is a business, education systems, they're just another business. With the new degree, I would have to restart, and I would only have 3 units accredited, which would mean I would have to spend another 4 years at uni. Doing 2 years of this degree put me in $45,000 debt. Now, can you imagine finishing the rest off? That's 90 grand plus 45. I've spent like 135 grand just to do this degree. It's a lot of money. And for a $60,000 to $80,000 a year maybe pay? Like, it just wasn't appealing to me. And so my degree got cancelled. I kind of was like, oh, well, okay, I don't know. Do I go back to uni? Do I study something else? Like, I don't know. And then 2 weeks passed and I got my spine scan back. I went and saw the scoliosis specialist, and he told me that all of my nerve pain was because I have scoliosis. So I didn't actually know I had scoliosis. I definitely would have had it since I was a teenager, because I remember working out in the gym and I was like, why is my left lower back like a rock solid, and then the right side's just nothing, like I'm even feeling it now. And so I've got this S-shaped curve in my spine, and basically from, bending over in that awkward position, doing lashes and brows and stuff for hours on end, it wasn't healthy for me. I wasn't getting any movement. My pecs shortened. So if you hunch over, what you'll find is your pecs actually shorten, because you're like a little prawn. And so those muscles are so tight and you have to stretch them out. And then your posture gets bad. You get bad sore neck. Like, it was really bad. And I just remember him saying to me, you can either continue doing this, but you'll eventually need spinal fusion surgery, or you just need to change careers and accept that this isn't going to be good for you long term. And it was like, either way, I was going to have to stop. So if I go get surgery, I'm going to get 2 rods down my spine and all these screws, and then my spine will be fused, and then I'll go back to lashing, or, I can stop now and change careers. And so I had a bit of an identity crisis. I was like, oh my gosh, my whole life was planned out so perfectly. I was going to have this holistic beauty and wellness center. I was going to have this person, this person, this person. Like, it was just, I had a goal. I knew what I was working towards. And just to have, within the space of 2 weeks, all of that ripped away from you, you feel like a failure. I felt like I failed in not only going to uni, but I also failed in the business I chose. I know, looking back now, nothing could have prepared me, or, no one could have told me that was going to happen. There was no knowing it. And I'm grateful for what I learned and the person I became through that experience, because having an identity crisis, it forced me to have a shift in which direction I was heading in life and what I wanted to do. And so for me, after that, I wasn't really doing much. And I remember putting it forward into that business coaching group and going, okay, guys, I have to close down my salon. I'm not sure what to do. And someone suggested to me that I build an online course teaching other beauty salon owners how to set up their business and hit the 10K months like I used to do. So I thought, oh, all right, well, yeah, I can do that. And at the same time, I received a DM from Miss Universe Australia. And they said, we've seen your profile on Instagram. We'd love to have you apply. And so I remember just thinking, what have I got to lose? Like, I've just lost my degree. I've just gone and done, I've just lost my business and I don't know what to do anymore. So I sent through an interview video. I went and applied for Miss Universe and I ended up being selected. So that was really cool. From that, I got put in the newspaper. I was able to share my story a bit more about coming to the country and running a business and, everything not going to plan. And I guess when you come from the country, you feel like everyone's kind of stuck in their ways and, judging you if you do something that's, out of the grain. And I think for once when I did that, it was cool to just realize that I could be so much more than what Albany used to be. Like, another thing that I haven't mentioned is when you live in a country town, you kind of are restricted by what you think is possible in life. And so every time that, I've, moved to the city or I've gone and traveled somewhere else, I realize that there's so much more to life out there than we realize. And you've just got to put yourself in different situations to create new opportunities. Things aren't going to come to you if you're there sitting there manifesting or expecting them to happen. You actually have to be putting in the work or taking action, and then the opportunities will arise. So I did Miss Universe. To be honest with you, I at that stage was also I had a bit of a following on Instagram. So I was doing bridal modeling. Fun fact about me, I've been married 10 times through all my bridal shoots. The amount of times that people have been upset with me because I haven't invited them to my wedding. Well, no, it's just modeling, sorry. But I loved doing that. I also found that through doing Miss Universe, I was really fortunate to use my beauty skills to then tap into the luxury market. So I started putting protective film on luxury watches. I'm talking like watches that are worth $1 million or $200,000. So these are people's house deposits or like entire houses just in a watch. And through being good with tweezers, able to apply protective film on these watches and being the only person in WA who does it, you create a high demand, you get really high paying clients. And honestly, if I have any advice for you guys, solve rich people problems. They pay way better. They're way better quality clients. They value you more. They respect you more. If you're trying to be the cheapest in the market and race to the bottom, you are going to have constant nightmares in business. People unhappy, people complaining, people causing headaches. Like, being in the luxury market, I also had massive imposter syndrome because I'm not someone who came from money. I'm not someone who grew up in the city. I didn't, have access or was even shown wealth. Like, no one had designer handbags. Everyone drove utes where I grew up and Prados. There wasn't all these Audis and Mercedes and Lambos. It's a completely different world. And I think as well, through learning about the luxury market and understanding how people work and, what they're buying status, they're buying brand association, that they want to be seen as prestigious. They're also buying an experience, and like learning those different things about how I needed to provide a great quality service to these high-end clients. That really taught me a lot about what we can learn in beauty when it comes to servicing clients and how to create an incredible brand. So obviously, if you want to be profitable, if you want to make more money, you need to build something that is prestigious, something that people want to buy into, something that people want to be a part of, whether that's a community, whether that's reputation, status. Like, it all sounds very superficial, but it's what people do. So even though, sorry, I got a bit sidetracked, but even though I didn't do amazing in Miss Universe and win Miss Universe, I was able to start doing watches out of that. And that's probably one of the greatest things that's happened or came from it, because what that allowed me to do is start networking with a lot of millionaires and billionaires. And when you spend time in rooms with people like that, you learn a lot of different things. You get access to different types of information and just all these little hacks and secrets that not everyday people are aware of. And so I think that's something that's really helped me also with my own journey in, being a coach and being a business owner, is having those insights and people mentoring me to be able to then help my clients as well. So, sorry, complete sidetrack. I'm really struggling because there's so much in here that I want to cover without leaving out all the details. But I also, don't even know if this is making sense. But did Miss Universe, I remember it was the runway night. And the day after, I launched my very first course and I had 6 people sign up and it was amazing. I thought that was, the coolest thing to have ever happened. And then I realized, I'm only making like 2-3 grand a month. I really need to bump up those numbers because I'm just not making enough right now. And so instead of going and getting a job for someone else while I built up my coaching, my online course, I just hustled. Like, I was doing watches, I was doing modeling gigs, I was doing social media marketing. Like, I would just find all these little side hustles and ways of making money without working for someone else. And it's really interesting because when I, coach people, I'm like, well, you can throw yourself in the deep end, but it's very stressful. It's very stressful. It's a lot of hard work and it's hustling. And I feel like you've got to be a certain type of person or have a certain type of mindset or drive to be able to do that long term, because it's not for everyone. Maybe it is better to build up a income and have that stability, build your business up, and then, slowly transition when your income from the business can replace what your working income can, then you make the switch. But for me, I was just like, I'm not working for anyone else ever again. So I made that promise to myself at 18 and I have kept that. Anyways, as time's gone on, launched the course, realized that having an online course, although it's great, not many people actually are motivated or accountable to do the course. Like, they'll buy it, they'll check it out the first week or two, and then they'll just forget about it. And then I realized I'm not going to have the impact that I want through just having a course. So what did I do? Well, I ended up going on all these payment plans. I did NLP. I did NLP Masters. I joined a Passion to Profits coaching program, which is another one separate from the first one. And that was like $7,000. I remember doing a hiring course. I remember doing money mindset. Like, I was just so hungry to learn all these different things. And because I don't spend money on myself, like, I don't buy myself nice clothes. The only clothes I buy myself are really like active wear because I wear it every day and I know I get the most use out of it. Like, 70% of whatever I made, I was investing. The other 30% was just covering my living costs. But I was just like, I need to make as much money as I can to learn as much as I can. I spent $15,000 on a one-on-one business coach to help me with systems, automations, and processes. He did none of that. We did weekly one-on-one calls that he rescheduled like 15 of them, which was wild. I didn't get handed over anything. So I've lost money to being scammed by people. I then, hit some big months in my business. I hit my first 20K month. I was, on a big roll. I was doing really well. I was in the world of, coaching and learning how to become a coach at the time. And I was transitioning from just doing the online courses into coaching and thinking, how can I leverage all the knowledge that I'd learned and the experiences and things like that from my whole life of family businesses and then the beauty business to now. So I flew across to Sydney in January 2023, and you would not believe how much it cost me. It's like $2,200 return flights from Perth to Sydney. I could have gone to Europe for that much. Wild. Anyways, went to this event and it was a 3-day business boot camp, and I was the youngest person there by a good 15 years minimum. Everyone was kind of like 35 to 50. And at the time, I was 20 years old. So I remember people were going up and getting awards, and it was like 250,000, 500,000, a million, and all of this stuff. And I was just like, how are people doing this? Like, I couldn't even fathom. Like, I thought $10,000 was a lot of money to make. But then it was just like, once you kind of make it and you realize it's possible, then you're like, oh, I can do that. Like, let's grow on that. And so I think at that stage, my mindset had been expanded about what was possible because I was getting put in these rooms with people who were doing 10x what I was. And when you see other people doing it, you can do one of two things. You can get really jealous and you can feel really insecure, or you can get super inspired and motivated. And for me, I was looking at them going, well, if they can do it, why can't I? And that's when I was like, all right, I need to really, take this coaching seriously. And what did I do? I got distracted by another business idea. So at that event, I met an incredible woman. Her name is Lily Cow, and we got along really well. And she told me, I'm running a beauty pageant. And I was thinking, oh, wow, I, competed in Miss Universe last year. She had competed in Mrs. Universe official. And so it was kind of funny because we bonded over that, and we were both like, pageantry is so messed up. Like, it is the most judgmental place. It's all rigged because people, buy awards, or, you go in there and you think that you're going to get this validation or this award, and when you don't get it, you actually come out 10 times worse than you went in with. Like, it's very similar in bikini competitions, actually. It's like you worked so hard, and then if you don't win the thing, or you even do win the thing, it's just like you still feel empty inside. And I think that was kind of like where we're at. We're like, how do we make a beauty pageant that is really empowering and really exciting and actually provides people with value? And so she told me the other people she had on board and what she was planning to do. And I got really excited because I thought this was like, this is going to do great things for my experience, my brand. It's a great opportunity. Why not do it? And I said yes to helping her out. For 3 months, I worked pretty much 12 to 14-hour days. So if you know me, I wake up at 4:30 a.m., go to the gym, 5, get to the coffee shop around 6:30, 7, and then I'll work. And at that stage, it was wake up, gym, coffee shop, have a coffee, go straight home, and then be on calls from pretty much like 7 a.m. till like 10 p.m. every single day organizing things. And throughout that period of time, I was, running a 6-month mastermind coaching program, and I was also doing the pageant. And I found that like I was kind of trying to do too much, but I was just so, I was so hungry and excited and driven that I was just showing up and doing it. And we had a team. So there was Lily, Tracy, and myself. Tracy, she owns Pop Unlimited. So she's incredible. She has, worked with massive brands like Coca-Cola. She does all of, their design and point of purchase sales. And her and I really teamed up, and we were doing everything from like contracts, organizing all of the contestants, marketing, getting all these sponsors on board. We got to work with people like Rockwear, Elements Bar and Grill in Sydney, And it just was crazy because all of a sudden I remember just being so insecure about my age. Like I was saying, back before, how there was that lady who was like, I want to talk to the manager. And I think getting given an opportunity like this at that, age and stage of my life, it really made me just go all in because I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to see what was possible. And I think that was probably one of the biggest stages of growth in my life because I was learning and doing so many different things that I both knew I was capable of, but I didn't know I could do because I was just like, I didn't realize I could do that. And I remember giving specific advice when we were in one of our team meeting calls. And I said, guys, I don't think that we should go this big so soon because obviously previously we'd, had some difficulties with running the rodeo. And I've just seen it happen before. You try to do this big grand event and you don't really have the funds to be able to hold it. And so, we built this brand. It was great. So I say I spent hours doing this, but through the beauty pageant, it was like, we wanted to be different. So I said, what if we called it Beauty and Brains? And then our 3 pillars were empowering women through education, entrepreneurship, and personal development. And so we had a weekend where for 2 days we had all the contestants. We did, ice baths. We had fitness and nutrition workshops. We had business development day. We had, a gala night. Like it was really cool to see it all come together. And then later on we had the final night and it was absolutely spectacular. If you were there, you would have seen how grand it was. It was at the Hilton in Sydney. But like what people didn't see behind the scenes was, being 2 weeks out from the event, having no money in the bank account and wondering how the hell are we going to come up with like $100,000 to be able to pay for this event. And, I felt like I was kind of having a conversation with my dad when I was trying to, discuss this with the team. It was just like, we don't have $20,000 to spend on flowers right now. Like I think we just need the event to go through. And there were just so many hidden costs and things like the Hilton. It was insane. We got quoted initially, I think it was like $23,000. And by the end of the night and adding in the rehearsal room and all these things, you get an invoice for like $60,000. So, running that business was incredibly stressful because we put it together. We did it all within 3 months. I've never seen someone pull off something that grand and that big in such a short period of time. It is a miracle. If you ever watch on YouTube, you will see what we were able to achieve. We had all of the other pageants come and give us a lot of recognition and it just blew it out of the water. But, it got so bad to the point where it's like, well, we don't even have money to then send the contestant across to America. Like there were so many things that were going wrong behind the scenes that it was just mentally, like I reckon my mental health and my physical health, really went downhill at that stage. You're sleeping 5 hours a night. You're completely brain's in overdrive and you're just thinking, how am I going to do all this? And then, you're also coaching. So you've got clients' problems and you're helping them problem solve and troubleshoot for that. And it was just like, the reason why I share this with you is because sometimes opportunities will present themselves and you'll get really excited. And it's kind of like someone's dangling a carrot and it's just like, do you take it or do you not? Because what's going to happen is you're going to invest all your time and energy into this other thing and it might actually just take you away completely from your main goal. And some things are not great opportunities. Some things are just simply distractions. I don't regret doing the pageant, but I do know that it's not aligned with my values anymore. And it's not the kind of place I want to be in. And, running that business and seeing people, I think it was just a way of us to, all try to prove ourselves, like, we can do better and like, let's make this better. And I don't know, it was more of an ego place than like a fulfillment place. And I think when you do things out of ego rather than for fulfillment, it becomes very toxic. And I honestly stepped away from it. I said, this isn't aligned. I don't think I'm the right person. And being able to make that decision and finally have the guts to say, no, I'm just focusing on myself, I'm doing my own thing, that took some real balls. Because for me, I've always lived in chaos, like I'm saying, all these different businesses, and being able to just focus on one thing at a time isn't something that I do well. But it took going through that, pretty much getting down to 48 kilos because all you're doing is drinking coffee and constantly, driving and going to meetings and like just so stressed. Like it was really bad. And, I share this with you because I know for some of you, when you run a business, you just keep pushing. You're like, I'll just get through this and I'll just do this. And you kind of pride yourself in being busy and having all these things to do, but you neglect so much of your health. And then it gets to the point, once again, like, I've had it twice. I've had severe burnout from running that beauty pageant. And I also had all of the nerve pain from, working crazy hours at salon. You need to be able to find some kind of balance. I don't think that work-life balance will always be perfectly balanced, but I think it's like at least recognizing that you're doing something for yourself that's outside of the business, whether that's, reading a book, hanging out with a friend, going for a walk, I don't know, doing Pilates, going and getting your beauty service done to make you feel good, like whatever it is, you need to find something that fills up your cup. Otherwise, you'll end up just burning out, hating life, hating your business, and you'll just be in that like scarcity breakdown mode. And it's just not a good place to be. And I got to that point. I was like, I actually just kind of not really stopped coaching, but I definitely had some time where I was like, okay, I'm closing down my mastermind. I'm going to build a new course. I did Salon Marketing Foundations, which was like a very basic version of what's now grown and evolved into Fully Booked Formula and gotten such epic results. But it was like I had to kind of realize that right now I need to actually heal and focus on myself. And I need to heal and know what it is I want and figure out what it is I'm working towards before I can actually help other people. And so I actually took time off, and funnily enough, when I was growing up, we never traveled. Like we just couldn't afford it. I think we went to one, trip to Gold Coast. We also went to a funeral in Hong Kong, but that was it. Like we were in so much debt that we couldn't afford to go on holidays. And I was really fortunate because one of my friends, she just finished her uni degree and she's like, I'm going to go traveling Vietnam for a month. And then I said, can I come? And I went and had the most incredible time of my life. I didn't touch my laptop. I didn't log on to social media, like business account for like an entire month. And like, this isn't great business advice, guys. This is just being really honest. That's what I needed at the time. And I realized that there's so much more to life than just working 24/7 and like business and, clients and everything. And when I realized that I could actually book a ticket and go somewhere else, back to where I was going. We didn't go on holidays growing up. So I thought it was impossible. I never thought in my life that I would travel. Like I just genuinely had this limiting belief that, the furthest I'm going to go is Perth. And then I went to Sydney and I was like, oh, wow, that's going to happen once in a lifetime. And, within the last 12 months, I've now gone to 8 countries and I've traveled to Melbourne, Sydney, like next year will be Brisbane. Like it's just crazy that, you kind of have this learned helplessness or like these set limitations that really keep you stuck. And then it's like sometimes you just got to break through them. Push yourself out of your comfort zone, do what seems like the impossible and you just give it a go and see where it takes you. Anyways, traveling, best thing I ever did because it taught me that there's so much more to life. And at the time, I didn't have much gratitude towards anything. I didn't have much appreciation for the life I have here because I was way too consumed in stress and work. And just to see that there's people out there who are way less fortunate than us, who don't have access to basic human survival needs, it actually changed my mindset of like, wow, I am so fortunate to live in Australia. I'm so fortunate to have a roof over my head. And it's just kind of all those basic necessities that we take for granted that kind of really made me realize, that I need to spend more time in nature, that I need to spend more time, with friends and building relationships with people. I shouldn't be spending my entire life just solely trying to build a business because, I put a lot of pressure on myself. I was like, I want to build a really successful business. I'm young. If I start now, imagine where I'll be when I'm 30. And then if I'm 30, imagine where I'll be when I'm 40. All you got to do is just start younger. It's like athletes, the younger you start, the more reps you got under your belt, the better you're going to be. And so, did traveling, came back, went through a very hectic breakup because obviously I just wasn't in the place to be in a relationship at that stage. And I learned a lot about that. If you have a partner, if you have a husband, if you're dating someone and you always put business before them, it's obviously going to take a massive toll on your relationship. If you're always in that like masculine alpha kind of mindset and energy, to a guy, that's, I don't know if you've learned much about all the like feminine and masculine energy. I didn't really know much about it at the time, but I was like, I'm actually just changing my mindset and my perspective. And like, it wasn't really working. Went through the breakup. And then I went, well, I may as well travel. So that put me on the path to living as a digital nomad. And to be honest, it was so good because when I did that, I got to go live in Thailand for a bit. I went and lived in Bali for a bit. Then I almost died from COVID. I had my temp at like 41 degrees for 6 days straight. I was not well at all. Missed my flight back to Phuket from Bali. It was, not good. But I just kind of had this time to like figure out, okay, how do I run a business that's kind of suited to my lifestyle and also travel and also, be able to be successful, I guess, in growing something, but also like live a good life. And so, now I've kind of realized that you need to have a lot of focus. And if you can focus for like, 6 to 8 weeks at a time and then you go do a little trip or, it doesn't have to be going international. It can just be like I could go down to Albany and see my family or, I could just do a staycay. But like you need to be rewarding yourself for the hard work that you're putting in because over time, if you're always just working and hustling, like you're not going to be happy. It's not going to motivate you to try any harder or, you just feel like you're not getting rewarded. And so it's really important to take those breaks and find ways to celebrate your wins. That's another thing that I never did. I never celebrated my wins. I was like, once I achieve this or once I reach this or, once I have this many clients or once I make this amount of money, then I'll be happy or then I'll be proud of myself. And it's just such a bad mindset to be in. And I see a lot of my clients do this too. It's like when I'm fully booked, then I'll be happy. When I have this many staff members, I'll be happy. It's just kind of like, the biggest thing I learned from traveling is you need to make an active decision in that point of time of like, I'm going to be happy now and I'm going to appreciate everything I have in this moment. And whether that's journaling, whether that's talking to someone about the things you're grateful, like whatever it is, just making sure that you're checking in with yourself and just finding things that you can be really grateful for. So back at home, we were still running the rodeos each year. And we continue to grow. So we're hitting around 5,000 people coming to each event. And that was bringing in around 70 to 80,000 profit per event. And so what that allowed us to do is actually like from one of the year's profit, we bought brand new bowling lanes. Then the next year's profit, we put a deposit down for a new location to build a new bowling alley because the other one we had was so old. It was like built in the 70s or 80s. The machines are all falling apart. Like, imagine being fully booked and then all the bowling lanes turn off and the computer scoring stops working, like dealing with customers and just trying to fix it. It was so stressful. Anyways, we decided we're going to build a new bowling alley. And so we used the profit to put down a deposit to purchase a new block of land, which had, a building on it. It used to previously be a furniture store. And what we've actually been doing is setting everything up so that we could build a new bowling alley. We put the deposit down with the agreement to lease the land for around 2 years, and then we purchased the property. And we were so lucky because at the time we locked in the price for 1.2 million. But what happened is all the buildings around it started getting sold. Like Bunnings sold for like 5.7 million. There were these other buildings and they're getting subdivided. And what happens is those prices went up to like 3-4 million. So all of a sudden, our building, the value was just going up and up and up. And other people were trying to go behind our back to the guy we're buying the land off and trying to give him high offers. And, luckily he had agreed and locked it in and stayed loyal to our offer. And yeah, we got our keys in like April 2022. And then in April 2023, we ended up finally getting our building license to start building. And then October 2023, we decided to close down the old bowling alley because we had the hopes that, we'll open by, April around Easter time in 2024. And yeah, the lease was coming up at coming to an end at the old bowling alley. The overheads and like what we were making, it was kind of just like breaking even or a little bit profit. It wasn't a huge amount because we reduced all our hours. My dad and brother would go in and build it throughout the day. So there was a lot less time where it was open. It just wasn't worth being open at that stage. And we didn't want to renew the lease or anything like that. So we closed down and we had $675,000 out on loans. So, we aren't a big corporation. We're a small family business. We loaned out against our house. We loaned out against all our cars. And pretty much that money ran out very quickly without us realizing. Like, you can have a budget, when it comes to a fit out or a build. And if anyone's had one done, I'm sure you really relate to this. You can have a budget there, but it doesn't matter. There will always be unexpected costs. It'll take longer than you expect. And what you don't realize is that, for us, we've got $20,000 a month coming out in loans, like repayments. So if you have $100,000 and you don't get the build complete, that $100,000 only buys you 5 months of time. None of that money can actually go to buying supplies, trades, getting the equipment, anything like that. And so, like I was saying at the start of the episode, having a family business and doing business, it either makes or breaks you. And this new bowling alley build, which I have shared on my stories a bit, it has probably been one of the most stressful things that we have ever done because there's so much on the line here. Running out at $675,000 in June of this year, and right now our fit out costs are just shy of $1.5 million, to give you an example. So we have had to privately lend. We have had some people really, really fortunately lend us money and not have to put security down for it because we've already borrowed out against everything. And you know what is crazy is because we have been consistently trying to bring something to the Albany community, being really genuine and humorous and transparent about our journey, we've attracted a cult-like following. So there's an insight in this that I want to share with you. If you go on any journey in business, if you're going to build something, you're going to create something, document it. If you show each step of the process, people are going to be really interested and invested in your journey. And so what we've done is, from everything from running the rodeo, we've also shown each step of the build of this bowling alley. And every day, every week, there's always new things happening and people are commenting. We're getting messages, when are you open? And that has been so valuable for us, because if we hadn't shared our journey, we wouldn't have had local businesses come on board and support us. We wouldn't have local council members trying to help us. We got quoted $47,000 for a Western Power supply upgrade. And through putting a post up on social media, we ended up getting it down to $27,000. It's really being able to create a community. You would hear this in my other podcast episodes with other successful beauty business owners. And one of the things that they share is the community they've built. How do you have loyal clientele? Well, you got to build a community. You got to make people feel like they're part of something, because then they will support you no matter what. And so with this whole build, it's been a massive stress on all of us, working 12-hour days. My brother's works FIFO. He does 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. He's had to pretty much quit his job and help out, because we are just at kind of breaking point. And I wanted to do this episode after the bowling alley opens. We're probably about 6 to 8 weeks off now. But I think it's so relevant to share the journey here and now, because, it's crazy. When you go through these things and it's hard, people will tell you, it'll all work out, it'll be fine. It's all good. But no one actually tells you how to deal with the tough time. And, for me, I have really had to do a lot of mindset work, and I've had to start having conversations with people about how I'm feeling and what's going on. And, instead of trying to bottle it up and just keep pushing on, it's like actually processing things, but not getting emotional about it, and being able to come up with solutions. And, like I'm saying, these tough times create the most resilient people. And so with this bowling alley, once it launches, we'll be sweet. This is going to be a incredible asset, because not only do we own the business, but we also own the land it's on. And that's another thing in business. You can have the business, it can be making money, but if you don't have any way of making that money make more money for you, you've got to either, with the income you're making or the profits, where are you putting that? What investments do you have? Do you own the land? Is that an asset? Or are you going to invest in, stocks, real estate, commercial, whatever it is, what are you investing in for the long-term wealth strategy? Another thing that I also will mention is, when we closed the doors in October 2023, I remember getting a call up from Dad, and obviously I'd just gone through all the pageant stuff. I was traveling and everything. He goes, what if we host a music festival? 2 days after the rodeo, we'll already have the setup there. We just move a couple things, toilets, all that. We'll host this music festival. And I remember thinking it sounds like a good idea. I'm not really sure. But because we needed more money, we kind of just crunched the numbers. And this is the thing. You can prepare for the best case scenario, but not many prepare for the worst. And so, we crunched the numbers and we're like, cool, well, we could probably turn over around 180, 200 grand, and then be able to profit around, at least 40 to 60 if things go bad. Well, they went a lot worse. We actually did not do as well as we'd hoped. We lost 10 grand on that event, which honestly, it's not as bad as, the first rodeos we ran, but it wasn't great because we were really relying or hoping that profit would help us get a bit more cash flow to continue building bowling. And I think there's a massive lesson in that. If you feel like something is going to be a massive risk and you're not getting the sales through, the interest isn't there, sometimes it can be the hardest decision to call something off. But if you know that the long-term result, or sometimes canceling the event, saying I'm sorry, apologizing, and just not going ahead is going to do way less damage than going through with something that you know is going to put you in a bad financial position. And I remember the day before just having this sinking feeling and feeling like we should call it off. We had radio interviews, we had newspaper, we had the news. It was just this feeling that it wasn't going to work out. We had 500 people come up. We were hoping for 2,000. It wasn't great. there was a lot of lessons that were learned, and I definitely know how I would do events differently, and, you know, where you started as a starting point, how you test ideas, all of those things. But that was another business thing that was just like, we probably could have just avoided doing that altogether. But we persevered. We managed to get to where we are today. I have still been involved in bowling, but I'm obviously not there. So I go down to Albany every now and again to help, but my role is more now the operations management and marketing. So we've had to deal with things like the liquor license. We've had to organise things like council approvals, being able to get engineering drawings done through, dealing like with so many different things. There's so many different moving parts, and it's crazy to think that, you know, only 3 people are building this thing by themselves or by hand. And then you've got my mum and I, like, who are doing everything in the back end. And it's just, it's so crazy. You know, I don't think anyone really has it figured out. You kind of just do wing it. But in saying that, winging it will only get you so far. And lately I've really been going, you know, we need a team behind this. We need experts. And it's kind of one of those awkward things as well. It's like, do you save money by doing it yourself, and then it takes you a longer amount of time, which can then ultimately cost you more in the long run? Or do you just pay the money up front and get the expert in, but then you have less money to spend on other things? So it's been a really interesting way of making decisions, but you know, we are more knowledgeable for sure in what we're doing, and I think there's a lot to give back to others through what we've learned. And this is why, you know, as much as this is so many things that I've just tried to explain, this is exactly why I became a business coach. This is why I started Beauty Industry Leaders, because when we ran all these businesses, when I was running my own business, I didn't really feel like I had anyone to go to. I didn't feel like anywhere I looked there was actually great advice out there. You know, people all flash, here's how I made 30K in 3 days, and, you know, work less than 20 hours a week, and, you know, you'll have this freedom. And it's just like, that's not real. Like, I hate to break it to you, but the people that promote that, they had to go through all of that hard stuff and all the crazy hours and the long days before they could get to that stage. You know, there's a lot of false advertising out there, and I think if more of us actually share the raw, real and vulnerable hardships in business and how you overcome those challenges, you'd realize that, like, oh, I don't feel like so much of a failure now because I haven't become a millionaire overnight. And it's really interesting because, you know, sharing my story, I always shied away from it because I was like, it's so much to tell someone. That's such a crazy amount of things to have done at such a young age and, you know, be here. And like, I'm 22 now, and it's wild, you know, being able to do a podcast, interviewing other industry leaders, helping businesses that are turning over like $700,000 how to become profitable. Like, I never would have picked that was what I was going to do. And I always let my age be my biggest limiting belief. But I realized it's not actually about your age. It's about your experience. It's about the amount of work you do on yourself, and it's about the knowledge and skills you acquire. And so right now, I'm really proud of what I've built. Probably took me a long time to admit this. Like, even saying this now, it feels weird because I have never considered myself to, you know, be really proud. I always just thought I had to keep doing more. But I have so much to be grateful for, even in all these hard times. I have an amazing family. I've got incredible clients. And I love being able to give back and help them because I know how hard the struggles are, and I know how lonely and isolating it can feel. And just if even sharing something out of this helps one person, it makes it worth it, you know? And when you are doing anything in life, when you're trying to, you know, be a better version of yourself, when you're trying to help others, like, who are others to judge you for doing that? I think that's the main thing we need to think about here is, like, when we are showing up in business, when we have clients, when we have students, like, what are we doing to pay it forwards and give back so we can make the world a better place. And I hope that by sharing this with you, that maybe you've been entertained, maybe you've learned something new. But this is my journey, and I hope you love this episode. If you have, send me a message. I love to chat about it. But other than that, I hope you have an incredible week, and I will catch you next week. Bye.
Audience exclusive.